Hello, YouTube and valued viewers. Byron at Splitting Slices. Welcome back to the Knife and EDC channel. Today is Sunday, August 2nd, 2026, and that means it's time to start the third and final part of our three-part series called 3x3 Knives. Now, this is an open tag response started by Tobias over at Knife Chats with Tobias, and the goal of the series is to show 3 knives for 3 consecutive days, and you must include a fixed blade, a modern locking folder, and a slip joint. I can do that. Let's get into part 3. Now, I'm calling this part 3 episode Heirloom Knives. Now, I have 3 knives on the table that I would consider all heirloom in some respects. Either I did get these knives handed down to me, or the knife is of such a quality that I would pass this on to future generations. Let's get into it. First, I'm going to quickly introduce 2 of the knives, and then we're going to talk about the fixed blade. The first knife I'm showing is basically an unknown manufactured knife. This is just a little jackknife with a clip point blade and a little spear pen blade, and it's got a heck of a story. So we're going to set that off to the side and finish up the video with that. The second knife is made by a company called Heirloom Knives. Now, they are located up in Nova Scotia, Canada, and what I have here is their model, a modern locking folder. It's a lockback, and it's called the 340S. We'll get into that knife here in just a second, but first we're going to start off the video with the fixed blade for today's episode. This is a knife that was handmade by a friend of the family for my father to complete a 2-knife set to be used for hunting. This is the caper knife of the hunting set, and it is made, the knife blank is made by Kinfolks. Now, Kinfolks is an old knife brand that was started back in 1925 by cousins of the W.R. Case & Sons Company and the Cattaraugus Cutlery Company that the Case family started. Dean Case, Russ Case, and Tint Chaplin basically formed a new company in Little Valley, New York back in 1925 to allow the W.R. Case & Sons family to focus on folders and traditional slip joints, but this was a way that the family could then focus on fixed blade knives. And so they created their own company in a small little building. Now, the original building was, I understand, blown away by a windstorm, but they rebuilt and they basically supplied knives up until close to World War II. And then they switched gears and made war knives, the M4 bayonet and other fighting knives for World War II, and then focused back on the fixed blades after the war. Now, unfortunately, due to labor reasons, Kinfolks closed in 1957, and another cousin, Emerson Case, basically ended up producing the brand name Kinfolks knives under the Robeson Cutlery brand or company name in Perry, New York. And that took place until 1965. And then the company closed for good. Now, unfortunately, the Heirloom brand, I am not sure if anybody owns it now, but I do know that, unfortunately, foreign knockoffs have been made, unfortunately, with the Kinfolks brand name. So you have to be careful if you look on these knives on the secondary market, but Kinfolks was a true and blue knife company until the mid-60s, and this knife had its knife blank made by the Kinfolks company. Now, the family friend basically went ahead and took the knife blank and made this beautiful caping knife. Couple specs on the knife. Basically, its overall length is 8 inches. Handle length is 4 inches, but has an inner grip length of 3 3/4 inches. Has a blade length of 3.9 inches of 440A steel. It's a drop point caper blade. Blade thickness is a 1/16 of an inch. Has brass bolsters, full tank construction, and then he basically put the bolsters and the handle on this knife and basically went ahead, epoxied and pinned with brass pins these beautiful zebra wood covers that you see, and that completed the build. All right. So my father used this quite often when he went deer and elk hunting out west with basically the father of this family friend who built the knife. The two of them would do a lot of hunting, and then Mike, who built this knife, actually joined him years later, and this got used quite a bit. That was one of my favorite activities of my father, who would usually go out there once a year toward basically the fall and go hunting with his friend and his son, and then also was an avid fisherman throughout the rest of the year. But Mike made this knife for him to do his caping work when they did bring in game. So that is the story of this knife, the knife blank being made by the Kinfolks Knife Company. All right, we're going to put that away. It comes in a beautiful leather sheath. The knife itself weighs 3.8 ounces and 6 ounces total when in the sheath. All right, so that's going to do it for our fixed blade. Definitely an heirloom knife because it has been passed down to me along with the Hunter, which I have shown on the channel before, but this may be the first time for that zebra wood caper. All right, the second knife is model number 640S. This is a modern locking folder. It's a lockback. The knife design comes from D.H. Russell and was made by the Groman Knife Company up in Nova Scotia, Canada. Now, this is one of their regular production models. It is a beautiful lockback folder with a unique profile, both the blade and the cant in relation to the handle shape itself. All right. Some specs for this knife. Overall length is 7 1/8 inches. It has a 4-inch close length. The blade length on this is 3 1/4 inches of high carbon stainless steel. So no actual steel make on this. I imagine it's something around a 440A or such. All right. The blade has a 50-50 finger choil with the head bolster of the lockback. You can see this has a head bolster, double fluted, and then some beautifully pinned rosewood scales on this mid lockback. I think we've got 5-pin construction on that. All right. The blade shape itself is a drop point with a swedge, a crescent-shaped nail nick to open it up, and a nice thumb ramp with jimping on that top thumb ramp. And it just gives it a very comfortable, easily usable shape to do just about any kind of cutting you want to do, both from a hunting skinner or doing utility cuts. It just makes a very comfortable, modern folding knife that you could carry to use in the field. Brass liners, okay, and again, that mid lockback mechanism that locks the blade in place. All right. Overall weight on this knife is 1.5 ounces and weighs 2.9 ounces with its sheath. Now, I want to say this is definitely an heirloom knife because this is something I would definitely pass down to future generations as a nice field folder to do just about anything you need to do in the way of collecting game or just general purpose use, just a general purpose field or camp knife. It makes a really nice knife. And I want to thank Todd over at Pocket EDC who gifted this knife to me after we made a few gift exchanges, and I really appreciate it. You can still get these knives both on the Grumman website direct, or you can get them at Discount Cutlery here in the States. They may be at other locations. You will just have to look. But again, this knife is made in Canada. It's a D.H. Russell design, and it is the 640S. S standing for second. And the blade actually, I think it's the bolster or it's the tang. Right there, I think you can see there is an S that is stamped into the tang of the blade standing for second. Now, as I understand it, they will second a knife just for the least little bit of of quality difference in the blade. And as Todd said, most of their seconds are better than many other brands' full production knives. And I do believe it after handling and using this blade. All right. Just a quick story on Grumman. So the Grumman Knife Company started back in 1949 when a salesman from Canada basically managed to finally talk a plant manager who worked in then German-controlled Czechoslovakia. His name was Rudolf Grumman, to come to Canada and start making knives with his assistants. And so he took him up on that after World War II, moved his entire family to Nova Scotia, and they began making knives. Now, his daughter, who took over the company in 1961, formally named the company Grumman Knives Limited, and has basically been building knives with their employees and her family members ever since. So, Todd, thank you very much for getting me the 640S. We're going to go ahead and set that right there for now. And now we're going to talk about the third and final knife, which I don't have a whole lot to tell you about this other than I got this from my father. It comes with a pretty good, nice story. It's definitely an heirloom knife, will be for me, and I will definitely pass this one on along with the story. And it is just a simple jackknife. Has a clip point blade of 3.5 inches. Has a penknife blade with 1.5 inches. This is carbon steel because it definitely has patina and pitting in the blades. I am guessing this knife is probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 years old. All right, and my father would carry this knife more or less on a daily basis. He had about 3 or 4 pocket knives he would rotate in and out of his pocket, but he had a little bowl that sat on his business desk at home. My dad was self-employed, ran a conveyor company who manufactured material handling equipment and conveyors for different companies around the Columbus, Ohio area. And he would do his pocket drop on his business desk at the house in a small wood bowl. And this knife was always laying in that bowl if he wasn't carrying it in his pocket. Well, since I knew he had 3 or 4 knives, I was about 8 or 9 years old, I thought, he's not going to miss this. And I took this knife out of the bowl and I put it in my pocket, and I carried it for a while, and then I left it in my room when I didn't carry it. And he noticed that it was missing. He went looking for it, and as I understand it, he found it one day when he was at the house while I was at school, and this was in my room. Well, we had a sit down. Let's put it this way. After the conversation, I was told that if I ever stole anything of my father's again, I could count on not only having all of my toys sold and given away, but that there may be other consequences as well. We'll leave it at that, but let's just say that was it. I just got a stern talking to, but if you knew my father, that was enough. And as I cannot remember me ever taking or borrowing anything of my father's ever again without at least letting him know I was borrowing it, and that I obviously would bring it back when I was done. He was big on making sure he knew where his tools were because he made his living with tools, and this knife was no exception. So I have managed to remember that story, keep that knife as an heirloom, and just a constant reminder that both children and adults need to be reminded of basic manners and taught basic manners to make it through life. Folks, that's going to do it for me. Those are my 3 heirloom knives, pardon me. I hope you enjoyed the stories and the information. This is Byron from Splitting Slices saying split a slice with a friend soon, won't you? Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and until my next video, everybody, please take care.